'Tis the season for icy drinks. Welcome to another video. My name is Heather, and as always, I'm reading with a vengeance, and as always, I hope you are as well. Today, I am going to talk to you about 11 books that have changed my life. Well, I might be on the little dramatic side. My husband's over there like, psh, a little dramatic. Change my life might be somewhat dramatic in some of these books, but there's a couple of them that actually did change my life. I think for the better, This is definitely an upbeat video, for sure. There are always those books where, that stay in our hearts forever, that might change our viewpoint on some things, or might inspire a hobby we want to try, or a place we want to visit, or something that we want to learn about. And that's really kind of what this video is. These are some books that have just been life-altering in some way or another, whether it be significant for some of them or not so significant, but life-changing nevertheless. Some of these books you've probably heard of. There might be a couple that you haven't. So let's get started. In no particular order am I going to do this list. It's gonna be, I guess, slightly chronological, because I'll start with my, when I was the youngest. One of the first books that had a huge impact on me, on my reading life, was Flowers in the Attic by V.C. Andrews. I read this when I was probably about 10 years old. It's not written for a 10-year-old, I can promise you that. There's some heavy themes in this book. If you don't know, this is about 4 children who, I believe, the father dies. The mother is forced to go live with her mother, so the children's grandmother, in this huge mansion. But the grandmother is evil or whatever and doesn't approve of the children, and she insists that the 4 children live up in the attic. And they're basically prisoners up there. And these are, I think the oldest is 16 years old, and then there's 15-year-old, and then there's, I don't know, like 6 or 7-year-old twins, and they're all living in this attic. And the mother keeps saying this is only temporary, as soon as, I don't know what she says, but she says this is only temporary, and stuff happens in the attic. Super compelling book. It's like 50 years old, this book. Maybe not that old, but it's been around for a long time. It changed my reading life because as a 10-year-old and I'm reading these things, I don't feel like it damaged me or anything, but it just kind of opened my eyes. It opened my whole reading world. Like, I don't have to read books that are just geared towards 10-year-olds. Now I'm talking, this is what was going through my mind as I'm reading this book. I don't have to read just books meant for 10-year-old. I can read all these other books. And it made me feel so grown up that I was comprehending the words that were written on the page and enjoying the story and riveted by this drama that was unfolding in this book. And it just kind of opened my world up as far as my reading tastes. The next book that had a huge impact on my life, I actually have a copy. Some of these I have a copy, not all of them though. The next book that had a huge impact on my life is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I don't remember the first time I read this book. I've read it many, many, many times over the years. I like to call it my favorite book of all time. I try to reread it every couple of years. There was a time where I was reading it every year at Christmas time. It's just that story that stuck with me because of, I think, of how old I was. Like I said, I don't remember exactly how old. I feel like I was maybe 11 or 12 when I read this book for the first time, and it just stuck with me, and I absolutely love this story. If you haven't read it or don't know the story, it follows Scout, who is a young girl living in the Deep South during the 1930s, I believe. She's got an older brother, Jim, who is not much older, and their father, Atticus Finch, is the attorney. They're a defense lawyer in their very small town. Tom, who is a young black man, is accused of raping a town white woman, and he's put on trial, and Atticus defends him. And this story tells what happens to their family when a white attorney defends a black man in the Deep South in the 30s. There's lots of other heartwarming things actually that go on in here. There's a recluse that lives on Scout and Jim Street, and he's kind of like the local boogeyman, but it's mostly a misunderstanding, and the kids get into some shenanigans trying to draw him out of the house. Mostly this is a book about racism and tolerance and a coming of age story, which if you watched any of my videos, you know how I feel about coming of age stories. I absolutely love them. So yeah, this book has been one of those books that has been in my life for most of my life, and I absolutely love it. The next book I want to talk about that most people have heard of, and it's probably a little dated, but it helped me at the time, and that is Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus by John Gray. This book came to me, I forget how I came across this book. So I'm married now, but I'm married to my second husband, very happily married. I was married to my first husband for 8 years, and we were happily married. And I won't go into the boring details of why it didn't work out. We just grew apart. And that's that. It wasn't ugly or nasty or anything like that. But I came across this book when I was married to my first husband, and just a little history. I'm an only child who was raised by a single mother. So I didn't really have a father figure. I didn't have brothers to speak of, and I didn't have a lot of guy friends growing up. So really, how to be in a relationship did not come naturally to me. You know, they don't have how-to manuals. And this was kind of that for me. It was kind of a how-to be in a relationship. And the premise of the book, it's kind of funny now. I mean, it's been around for so long, but the premise of the book is basically that, you know, once upon a time, you know, men were from Mars and women were from Venus, and then all of a sudden they came to Earth to live, and they realized as they were trying to relate to each other that they come from different planets. And it just kind of talks about the inherent differences between men and women, how to find your way together, working out these differences. And one of the main things that I remember from the book that I still apply to this day is he talks about this phenomenon that many men do. I hate to generalize, but it's just something that men do. And he talks about how they go to their cave. And I'm, you know, this is just from memory. I haven't read it recently. So I guess men like to just kind of go off and be on their own and be with their thoughts, or just gel out, or do whatever it is they do. But John Gray refers to it as men going to their cave. Women do not belong in the cave. The cave is off limits. Let them go and do their thing in the cave, and you just wait patiently for them to come out of the cave. And then all is good. It's not like they go into the cave with another woman, or they go into the cave to think about other women, or anything like that. They just need some space and time alone. So I remember, before I understood that phenomenon, that, you know, when my husband would go off into the cave, I was super self-conscious about it and insecure about it. Like, what is he doing? Why doesn't he want to be with me? I was very young at the time, but once I learned that, it kind of took a lot of the insecurity out of our relationship. You know, and that's just one aspect. This is just an example. And I just thought it would be fun to share. But it is something that, you know, it changed an aspect of my relationship at the time, and it's helped me in my relationship since, and my current relationship. You know, it also helps that I'm a grown-ass woman now, and I know that all people need their space, but it's just one of those things that has just stuck with me over the years, and there you have it. The next book I will talk about is also a very well-known book, and it just came to me at a really, really good time. I've talked about this book before in a previous video, and I've mentioned also before that there's a lot of people who hate this book, and so I won't go too far in the details of that. I, of course, will just talk about how the book affected me, and that is Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert. This book came to me when I was going through my divorce, or shortly after my divorce. This is a memoir, and so this is Gilbert's tale of when she got a divorce and was dealing with depression, and she pretty much kind of sent herself on a trek through India, Italy, and Indonesia, I believe, and just kind of finding herself. You know, I've always thought that the best way to describe it is in the synopsis, and that is her aim was to visit 3 places where she could examine one aspect of her own nature set against the backdrop of a culture that has traditionally done that one very well. You know, in Italy, they do food. They do it very well. Her trek there was, you know, to seek out pleasure, just for pleasure's sake. India, I think, was a spiritual exploration, and then Indonesia, Bali specifically, it was about transcendence and whatever that entails. But mostly for me, it basically hit me hard because I was going through a divorce, she went through a divorce, and it was kind of the catalyst of her finding her way in life, and she gave up a lot of material things and just was seeking out what was important to her. Because also it wasn't that she was unhappily married, she was just married and unhappy, and that's exactly what happened to me. I just kind of related to that. That book hit me in a way that I think it was supposed to hit people, and it just kind of found me at just the right time. It changed my perspective and it helped me through a very hard time. And at the same time, it also, you know, I read about this woman who's going to these amazing places by herself, and that's when I started to travel by myself, and I ended up, you know, going to some places on my own. I ended up going on a trip to Thailand by myself, and it was one of the most amazing trips of my life. And so really it just kind of, I've always been kind of an independent person, but this kind of gave me that extra permission, I guess, and inspiration to do things in life that bring you joy and bring you happiness. And so yeah, right book, right time. The next book that had a huge impact on me is just this tiny little book called The Four Agreements. I would recommend this for anybody. This is one of those books that kind of came to me when I was in a place of kind of floundering of where I wanted to go in my life, and you know, what's my purpose, and what am I doing here? And it's not like it answered any of those questions per se, but it just kind of gave me perspective. And it's a short little book, and it's something that I refer back to every now and again. And they're good reminders, and it's basically reminding you how to be a good human. Oh, this is by Miguel Ruiz, if I didn't say so. And really the Four Agreements, not to spoil it, but just how to be a good human being. Be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. If you do those things, or if you make every effort to do those things, you can probably count on being the best human that you're capable of being. And they sound simple, and they are, but today, these days, in our society right now, I guess some people find it very difficult to do that, myself included. So these are just really good reminders of how to be a good person on a daily basis. As you can see, there's a couple of places where I've highlighted some. Let me see, what does that say? I'll just throw out another example. If others say one thing but do another, you are lying to yourself if you don't listen to their actions. If someone is not treating you with love and respect, it is a gift if they walk away from you. Little nuggets like that are super helpful. This one has stayed with me for a long time. The next book I have talked about before in a previous video. I'm not quite sure why I've held on to this book. It's not like I reread it. But anyways, this one is called Skinny Bitch, and it is by Rory, Freedman, and Kim Barnewin. Sorry about that. This has been around for a while. So what this book is, it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek book. It is these two women. One is a former model, and the other one is she used to work for a modeling agency. This is an in-your-face, well, it says a no-nonsense, tough love guide for savvy girls who want to stop eating crap and start looking fabulous. Ridiculous. But it's mainly shoving veganism down your throat, really. But it does it with humor. So they're very hard-hitting, like stop putting crap in your body. And they mostly talk about like processed sugar and caffeine and things like that, and meat. How this changed my life is, so this is how it went. I'm reading along and I'm finding it interesting and I'm finding it funny. But then I get to the chapter where they talk about what happens at chicken houses and slaughterhouses. And I was sobbing by the end of that chapter. And by the end of that chapter, a switch flipped in my mind, and I have not eaten meat since. This is in no way me trying to tell you to become a vegetarian or vegan or anything like that. This is just my own experience. It just flipped a switch, and this was in 2008. Yes, this book turned me into a vegetarian. I will say, so this book was the start of it, but the more I've learned over the years of what it is to be a vegetarian, and the more I've learned about the impact that slaughterhouses have on the planet in general, my reasons for staying a vegetarian have evolved. So yes, I'm more of a pescatarian now. I do enjoy fish every now and again, but for the most part, I don't eat meat, and this is why. But like I said, I'm not a vegetarian snob. We talk about it a lot. I'm married to a man from Mississippi who is a meat and potatoes guy. He's super, super thoughtful. He's the cook in our family, and he's always looking up wonderful vegetarian recipes, and he eats mostly vegetarian with me, but we can break bread across the table, and he can have his ribeye while I'm having my roasted veggies. I don't look down my nose at him or anybody else who eats meat. I don't judge people. If anybody asks, I tell them why I'm a vegetarian and why I think it's a good idea to be a vegetarian. Yeah, it's a personal decision for everybody. So, but yes, this book changed my life in that way. It is a funny book. It's funny, but these girls are snarky, so beware of that. So yeah, skinny bitch, which I've never been. Well, they're half right. And kind of hand in hand, as far as talking about health and all of that, one of the books that has changed my life as far as my physical activity goes is Total Immersion, The Revolutionary Way to Swim Better, Faster, and Easier by Terry Laughlin with John Delves. So for the longest time, I was a runner. By the time I was probably 18 years old, I would do 10Ks, 5Ks. It turned into running half marathons, and I would run all the time. And I enjoyed it. But then as you get older, your body says, not so much anymore. I think my last half marathon I did in Guam, my body said, if you do this again, I will kill you in your sleep. Slightly dramatic, but my body basically said, no more running, please. It hurts. So I needed something that made me feel like I was still getting a good workout, but just was a lot nicer to my body. And I discovered this book. Who'd have thought? I mean, it's not like I didn't know how to swim. I learned how to swim as a child, but this basically talks about technique that they don't teach you when you're a kid. I didn't get formal swimming lessons when I was a kid. Basically, I got the basic lesson of please don't drown in the deep end of the pool. So this book talks about technique and tips and working smarter and not harder and still getting a good workout. It also has sections of programs that you can follow to get better, routines that you can follow to get better. I found it just very, very helpful. And it's got little pictures of what to do or what not to do. So I learned how to swim well from a book. Who'd have thought? So yeah, Total Immersion, super helpful. And my joints say thank you. Next book that had a huge impact on my life is called Modoc. Let's see, it's the true story of the greatest elephant that ever lived. I can't remember if I've talked about this book yet or not. This is by Ralph Helfer, and this is the true story about a young boy who, under certain circumstances, he is raised kind of with this elephant, and then as life changes, they end up getting separated, and it talks about what Modoc goes through as a circus elephant, as a working elephant, and the terrible things that happen to her, and then as they find his kind of journey trying to find her, and they're reconnecting after a really long time. It is a heartbreaking story, heart-wrenching, and I sobbed several times during this story, but one of the things that kind of sparked my interest here was just obviously the relationship between animals and humans, which I absolutely love. And specifically from this book, it talks a lot about elephants and their nature and what they're like and their intelligence and their how very similar to humans they are as far as emotions go, and how they mourn their dead and how they treat their young. Very, very similar in that regard. I can't remember exactly how I got from Modoc, the book, to reading this article in a magazine about this elephant rescue park in Thailand. It talks about the author of this article who went to this rescue camp. She basically spent, I forget how long, maybe just a couple of days there at this elephant nature park. And she was feeding the elephants, bathing the elephants in the river, and there was no elephant riding. I was just completely enamored with this story that this woman spent this time with these elephants at a rescue center. I had to go, and I did. So I spent 2 weeks volunteering at the Elephant Nature Park in Thailand, and every day you would spend maybe 4 hours, 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon doing chores, either cutting up the food for the elephants or picking up after them in their stalls or in the fields, or chopping down corn stalks in the cornfield for their food. And then the rest of the time was your own to kind of wander around the park. And each elephant had their own mahout, which was their person that stayed with them all the time. The mahouts would lead them down to the river every day for bathing, and you can splash water on them and just kind of observe their behavior, feed them when it was feeding time, and it was just glorious. And I became kind of an ambassador for elephant rights, if you will. It's just kind of my personal project as far as who I donate money to, and I like to educate people. I like to encourage people not to pay to feed the baby elephants that are on the streets of Bangkok, which is kind of a touristy thing to do, or the parks where you can go and ride elephants. I try to encourage people not to do that because it's just not a good thing for elephants. So this book, Modoc, has just kind of inspired me to learn more about the elephant as a species and learning what I can do to try to discourage, the use of elephants in the working field, like at circuses or for logging companies and in the tourist industry. So that's just been my kind of personal project, and Modoc was kind of the catalyst for that. The last book I want to talk to you about is called The Book of Awakening by Nepo. So the author is a cancer survivor, and this is something that he put together after his recovery. It's basically just kind of 365 days of something short that you read every day. They're just little inspirational either quotes or not cheesy things that you would see on a day-to-day calendar or something like that. Really meaningful inspiration. And it came into my life. There was a time years ago where I did deal with some depression. I sought out help for it. I ended up going to seeing a therapist. And I also went to group therapy, and in group therapy, there was a woman there who recommended this book. And so I got it, and it was extremely helpful. It didn't solve all my problems, but it gave me different perspective, and it really helped me. For a year, I read a page from this book, and it was beautiful. The author offers, words about pain, about love, about or difficulty in life, and just offers new perspective. And each entry also is accompanied by an exercise that you can do, not necessarily a physical exercise, but something that will make you think about things maybe in a different way. And I think there's space that you can write in. You can kind of use it as your own journal. And I found it super helpful during a difficult time in my life, and I highly recommend it. So yes, while not all my problems were solved from that book, it was just one of those things that had a huge impact on my life. So that's it. Those are the books that have had an impact on me in my life, that changed my life in some way or another. Have you read any of these books, and did it have that kind of impact on you? I would love to hear your thoughts down in the doodly-doo. Do you have a book that changed your life in some way that you think that I might like? I would love to hear about it. If you're still watching at this point, please consider giving that like button a boop and perhaps subscribe. That would be super helpful. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.